Holiday weekend rocked by so many questions about that plane crash in San Francisco. And you are looking live at the remains of Asiana Flight 214, still sitting beside the runway, a charred clue to a mystery. Tonight, passengers and seasoned pilots across this nation asking, how could this happen on a commercial flight with professionals at the controls? And what about those 7 seconds when life and death decisions were being made in the cockpit? ABC's David Muir leads us off. He is there tonight. And David, we begin with you.
Hey there, Diane. Good evening to you. And here's another view of that charred out fuselage right there across the bay behind me, still sitting beside the runway. And what a scene it must be, Diane, for so many passengers coming in on flights landing on runways just adjacent to that aircraft. Tonight here, though, as you mentioned, those final 7 seconds, the chaos in the cockpit revealed.
Tonight, new images of those fleeing passengers determined to get out alive after Asiana Airlines Flight 214 crashed as it came in for landing. You can see the emergency chutes in flight, passengers sliding down them, racing to get away from that plane. The family capturing these images stunned at what they were seeing.
Oh my God, that's scary.
They're running out.
With the cloud of dark smoke growing, some of the passengers can be seen running for their lives to the end of the runway.
Everybody's just running.
All of this unfolding after those crucial 7 seconds that decided the fate of this flight. The pilot in charge of landing in training, the first time landing a Boeing 777 in San Francisco. And from one of the black boxes, we've learned that just 7 seconds before impact, a call from the cockpit. The pilot suddenly looking to increase speed, the jet hovering far too low over the water. Then just 4 seconds before impact, the jet approaching the seawall at the end of the runway, and from that black box, the sound of what's called the stick shaker, an urgent warning mechanism in the cockpit that literally shakes the controls in the pilot's hands, as seen here in a video by MPL Simulator Solutions. That shaking, telling the pilots the jet was suddenly moving too slowly to pull off a safe landing. And then, just a second and a half before impact, a call from the cockpit for a go-around to circle the airport again. It was far too late. The jet crashes, the tail hitting first, shearing off the back of the plane. Tonight, the NTSB investigating those crucial 7 seconds and that pilot in training. The airline saying he was experienced on other aircraft, but just 43 hours training time on the 777.
Is 43 hours enough to be landing at San Francisco Airport?
Well, you know, there's always going to be a first time for someone to land at a different airport.
The NTSB telling us tonight the co-pilot just as important, who was there to guide him. And tonight, with those new images, a clearer view of the different shades of horror the passengers faced on that plane, depending on where they were sitting.
Right there. It's right there on the runway. Yeah. And
Survivor Benjamin Levy surveying the wreckage with us from the bay. He was sitting in seat 30K.
Very close to the emergency exit?
The very seat next to the door, yes.
The challenge for him, that exit chute mangled. He had to help fellow passengers climb down out of that door using the debris as stairs.
Everywhere is ash.
Chong Wen, seat 40C, traveling with her 4-year-old son who broke his leg. In the middle of the cabin, minutes after escaping, you could see the flames through the windows. There was Eugene Ra in seat 3K. He'd been bumped up to business class just before the flight. Those rows still intact, one of the first off the plane. A stroke of luck because the front of the plane was the first to catch fire.
The second door is where you both climbed up.
That's correct.
Tonight, the firefighters first to respond, climbing up those chutes and into the burning plane, where they found trapped passengers in the back.
When we first get in, you could see smoke just coming right out the door there.
Could you see the fear in their faces?
I think it was more shock that I saw. I didn't see fear, I saw shock.
And this evening, new images of the 2 girls lost, the 16-year-old schoolgirls from China. The fire chief telling me the investigation underway into the very real possibility that one of them might have been hit by one of the rescue trucks during the chaos. As a community back home remembers the young girls who formed that heart over their head with their arms.
That would be just another heartbreaking development. But Diane, I wanted to share with you something the firefighters told me, the ones who entered that plane while it was still burning. Take a look here behind me at the fuselage. You can see the very orange end of the plane. That's the tail that ripped off. They formed a sort of human chain inside the back of the plane, carrying those final passengers who were trapped off the back of the plane, down onto the runway, and to safety. So many stories of heroism emerging here.
Thank you, David, and thank you for all the great reporting this weekend. And as you said, there are so many stories that have everyone defining courage tonight. One of them, we're talking about flight attendants on the plane. And a tiny, fearless young woman who, with quick thinking and superhuman strength, saved a lot of lives at ABC's Cecilia Vega has her story.
She was the very last person to make it out alive, assisting as terrified passengers slid down the evacuation chute, then trying to make one final run to the back of the burning plane to be sure she left no one behind.
I had to hurry. I couldn't think of the danger to myself.
That's lead flight attendant Yoon-hae Lee with a child clinging to her back, running as fast and as far away as she could from the wreckage. Other survivors say she carried people twice her size to safety.
She was so tiny and skinny, and I couldn't believe how powerful, how strong she was. She was helping other flight attendants, and even outside the plane, after she got up the plane, she was running around the plane without any fear. She was really brave.
So brave, she stayed to make sure everyone was okay, watching over as paramedics treated the passengers she had just saved.
She was so composed, I thought she would come from the terminal, and she actually mentioned that she was on the plane. I mean, she was a hero in my mind.
She is the Sully Sullenberger of Flight 214.
This child was afraid to go down the slide, so I tried to encourage the child, put him on my back, and slid down.
Through it all, she says the only thing on her mind was rescuing the next passenger. What Lee didn't know as she rescued all of those passengers one by one was that she too was hurt. She broke her tailbone, she thinks, during that crash landing. She only found out how hurt she was when she went to the hospital later that day and was told by doctors. Diane, a true hero.
Thanks to Cecilia Vega. Now I want to bring in ABC's Colonel Steve Ganyard, veteran pilot, trained military accident investigator. Steve, great to have you here. You wanted to show us first what it looks like if you had a perfect landing, the slope.
Yep.
Let's see it.
This would be an average day at San Francisco where a pilot comes in, brings the airplane in on a 3-degree glide path. He's stabilized on the glide path. The airplane is on speed.
And in this case, what happened with these pilots in this plane? They are coming in and about 82 seconds out. You say they don't know anything's wrong?
No, everything's good. Everything's good until 82 seconds, and then the pilot disconnects all the computers and takes over manually.
So he should not have disconnected everything.
Not everything, because now the engines are all the way back at idle. You see the big dip that occurs here. That's where he's flying this airplane manually. You see he gets well below the glide slope where he's supposed to be on, and at the very end, the airplane is so slow that it's below the stall speed.
And when we look at the experience of the pilot in this plane, the 777, 43 hours, is that a central explanation? What do we know?
The co-pilot was the one who was really in charge of this flight. He was the check airman. He was the instructor. He was the guy who was supposed to be teaching this captain how to fly this airplane. And in this case, he failed to notice that nobody was working the engines, and that's why they ran out of airspeed and altitude.
So having an experienced pilot in the co-pilot seat should have been just fine. This happens all the time?
It happens all the time.
Colonel Steve Ganyard, thank you again, Steve.